Welcome to Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Platinum Jewelers. Platinum Jewelers is located in Germantown, Tennessee at 9387 Poplar Avenue. It's directly past the light. As you go through the light at Johnson Road, it's right there on the right-hand side. Preston Hudson and the owner and his staff take really great care of all the customers that come in there. They have such a really fine selection of jewelry, so you won't be disappointed. Make sure you go out there and check them out. Joining me today on the podcast for episode 132 is Loren King, also known as Loren the Activist. Loren is an international speaker who is originally from right here in Memphis, Tennessee. She goes all around the world bringing awareness to topics like human trafficking, which is going to be our main focus today. And our podcast series with her today is part one. And she's also a registered dental hygienist, a life performance coach, and speaks in front of large audiences about dental sleep medicine, dental hygiene education, performance, and also human motivation. Even with all those things, as super busy as she is, she's also a published author. That's pretty awesome. She's lived in, for as far as I know, and there might be more cities than this: Nashville, San Diego, a couple different cities in Hawaii, New York City, Denver, and now she resides in Seattle, Washington. Thanks for joining me today, Loren.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. I know we've been trying for a little bit, but people are moving fast, and that's a good problem to have. So
absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on today to talk about the subject here. I mentioned that you are from Memphis. Tell us a little bit about your childhood here, where you went to school, and just maybe a couple of fun memories that stick out most in your mind.
So I haven't actually lived in Memphis since 2012. And so it's been a really long time, and I still have friends that are there. They tell me about how things have changed. But primarily, I think I would say what Memphis taught me is grit and how to work hard and to not stop. I feel like most people that grow up in Memphis, it being such a hard city, and it's a beautiful city, but it's a very hard city to grow up in most parts of the city. I mean, the high school I went to, I was going through metal detectors every day in order to get into the school. Yeah. So, like that does something to you, that says something about your environment. And so I don't see it as a negative, though. I see it as it really taught me things about the world that I might have been sheltered to otherwise, and that I might not have ever seen or appreciated. And it's such a cultural city, and everyone is really like, they just come together when you need them. And I will say it's been hard to find that anywhere else, but I found home in almost every place that I've been in some way, form, fashion, or person. And it's, for me, it's always been something to look back on to keep me in that mindset of, be inclusive, work hard, remember the grit that you grew up with, and remember the people that you grew up with along the way too.
Where did you go to high school?
Cordova High School.
Yeah. And they just had, out there, I think at the Jamboree the other night, I don't know if you keep up with get any of the news from here, which is probably good that you don't. They just had, I think there were some gunshots at the Jamboree out there at the football game the other night. So yeah, but it's just, unfortunately, there's crime everywhere, but obviously, Memphis, most dangerous city in the country, and people have to be careful everywhere they go now.
I know it really is true. And I think that, with talking about human trafficking and trying to bring awareness to that, it's kind of the same mindset. If you really think about it, if it's not happening to me, it's not happening. And it's like, actually happening right in front of our faces.
Right.
It's just, we have this mindset of, we live in a country where it'll never happen. And that's just not true, unfortunately. And I know it makes some people uncomfortable to talk about, but we're always going to be uncomfortable until we start talking about the things that make us uncomfortable.
Definitely true. I tell everybody, if the city could be like going to a Grizzly game, when you have people of all different ages, races, religions, getting along, high-fiving, cheering their team on. It can be like that. If it could be like that all the time, everywhere, it would be wonderful. because when you go there, no one talks politics, no one's talking race or religion. Everybody's just high-fiving, cheering, hugging, and getting along. And it's unfortunate that it can't be that way most of the time.
Why do you think that is?
I just think that people, we live in a such a world today, is positive the social media has been, over the last, I would say 18, 19 years since MySpace and things like that came in. MySpace is funny to even say that now. um, there's just as much negative. I mean, crazy people have the world at their fingertips, and people, lonely people can get sucked in by bad people online all the time. And then, there's also more to it also, yeah, not having, I think having the right people around you, having, the parents, watching out for you, taking care of you, whether it's a one parent or two parent home. That's so important. And I've talked about this. I'm friends with the former police association president Mike Williams, and we talk about how with Memphis it needs to be built from the inside out. You have to go into the poorer communities and build the community centers and have the right people around, so these kids feel like they have a chance, like there's something else besides the gangs to get into. And they feel that other people care. Some of them feel like there's no other option. Then, and I'm not giving them, because there's always free will, but I think that there needs to be other options. If we want to spend $350 million from the state of Tennessee on redoing the FedEx Forum and building a soccer stadium, all that's great, and I'm all for it. But all that's going to be destroyed if you don't build from the inside out and help the poor areas first.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, that's one of the avenues where human trafficking starts. It's with runaways. It's with children that are growing up in homes where they feel like they have no choice and they have to make money, right? Or
Right.
someone introduces them to that world, and it's the same concept. They have to make money, right? They have to take care of their kid. And unfortunately, in some scenarios, their kid becomes that line of money.
Yeah. You started off studying dental assisting at Concord College, I believe, here at Concord Career College in Memphis, and then headed to San Diego where you studied dental hygiene. I have a few friends that live in San Diego. One of my lifelong friends is a U.S. attorney there. They love it, say it's the best weather in the country. How was your transition moving there, and how did you enjoy the few years you were there?
I think it's a beautiful place to live. I think that people are nicer there than in most places, and they're more open-minded than most places as well. They're more open-armed than most places, but it is so expensive. I cannot tell
Oh
you.
gosh.
And you're getting a box. It's like a box with no AC, no washer dryer. I mean, it's just, for me, I was like, okay, this place is beautiful and I love it, but am I really going to sit here and do this? And then you throw taxes into it as well. And it's just like, man, like
Yeah.
me, it was just too much. But I almost went back there this year, actually, before I came to Washington, because I hadn't spent a lot of time in Washington, but I was asking myself, because I knew I wanted to leave Colorado. I was like, okay, where was I the happiest? Where was I, enjoying the most of my time? And it was always San Diego when I would really sit down and think about it. But it's just there was negatives to it too, just like everything. And so I had a company that asked me to come out here to Seattle, and then decided to stay here, and I really love it. I lived on the east side, like on the outskirts of Seattle, for a few months, and I live in this downtown Seattle right now, or Lower Queen Anne downtown, and I'm actually moving back to the
Oh
east
wow.
next month, because I'm like, screw this, like the traffic is terrible. I didn't actually know this. It shows you that I can be very some people call it impulsive. I say I think very efficiently. But I moved here without learning about or moved into the city without learning about the traffic, and our traffic is actually worse than LA. And I didn't.
Really?
And let me tell you, it is terrible. And as a dental hygienist, and I'm a travel dental hygienist, so I'm at a different office every single day. The
Okay.
short tour is so bad. there's something like 200 open dental hygiene positions here right now. So you have no problem finding jobs, that's for sure. And it quite literally is that bad where it's a different office every single day, but it could be anywhere. I have my radius set out to like 30 minutes. But unfortunately, if you're comparing distance to traffic, 30 minutes here is really an hour. And
Wow.
all of the shifts are on the other side where I was living. And so I'm like, no, it's just, so I'm moving to downtown Kirkland on the water. And San Diego was definitely a good time for me. It has some moments where I learned a lot. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I went through a divorce in San Diego. And I was super young and good person, just not my person.
Sure.
But I think at that point in time, I had been there for 3 years and my family was majority in Nashville or relatively close to Nashville around that time. And so I was like, let's go closer to home for a little bit, not home, but let's go closer to home for a little bit. And so I went to Nashville and that was great too.
My friend tells me don't complain about paying $3.59 for a gallon for gas. He goes, I'm paying in San Diego $5.79.
$5.50 is what it cost me.
Yeah. So yeah, everybody's used to these prices now, and out there is probably $5, and here is $3, and it's just yeah, it's yucky. I don't think it's going to go down too much more. Not at all. But yeah, at least you're moving closer. That'll be much better for you, and you'll be on the water too.
Yes. I've learned that I need the mountains, but I also need a little lake or something. I need some body of water.
Right.
And Washington it really does have it all. If you can get past the gloom, quote unquote, that doesn't bother me. I think gloom is beautiful. And I travel a lot for speaking, and I am going to be traveling soon for coaching and getting that kicked off. And so it's, I like coming home and having a space where I don't feel like I have to be out doing something.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
If I want.
What motivated you to become an international speaker on human trafficking, and how does with what you do with dental hygiene tie into it?
Yeah. I started speaking in 2019 in the dental industry. One of my really, really good friends and mentors, Elijah Desmond, has a conference. It's called Smiles at Sea, but he also has the Dental Festival. And within that is Dentistry's Got Talent. That's where, they have hundreds of applicants apply and they pick 50 speakers. You don't have to have any experience, or you can have experience. It doesn't matter. It's still a competition. And each contestant gets 10 minutes. You're no PowerPoint, no nothing. Just you on a stage with a microphone.
Wow.
And you're judged for it. And at the end of it, the speaker that wins gets a paid contract for the next year. And so I applied. He kind of scooted it in my line of sight, and I was like, yeah, okay. And I always liked to help and teach and speak. I was a student delegate in my dental hygiene program, and I was used to standing up for things if I thought something wasn't right. And so I wasn't expecting to be chosen because I had zero experience. But like I said, you didn't have to have experience. And I spoke for 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes, it was an absolute car crash. It's like watching a car crash that you can't stop. When I watch it back now, I actually refuse to watch it. If someone asks me, I'm like, I'll send it to you, but I'm not going to sit here and watch it with you. But I talked about AIDS in Africa. I talked about human trafficking. I talked about how we can only see like a certain percentage of our sky. And I also quoted Matthew McConaughey. I quoted Tupac, all within 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I was talking about having a soul and how we all have souls, just very lost human. And people loved it. And
wow, that's cool.
It wasn't that I was a good speaker. It's that the way it was described to me is I feel like no matter what you're saying, I want to listen to you talk. And that's something that you can't teach. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, I need to lean into this is what it sounds like. I feel like I've found something that I'm not having to be taught. It's something that I will naturally want to do. It still scares the shit out of me every time you go through the whole like heart racing. You can ask some of the biggest speakers in the world and they'll tell you that feeling doesn't ever go away. It's just you learn how to regulate it before you get on stage so that
Right.
you don't pass out or anything like that. But one of my first mentors ever, she pulled me off the stage, like towards like the steps. She was the first person that came up to me after that speech, and she was like, I will teach you everything I know, but I need you to pick a topic. And she said, and I'm going to help you do that by asking you, which one can you relate to most? And so in my head, and I had never spoken about this publicly yet, and so she was technically the first person that I ever told, including anyone in my family. And I told her, I was like, well, I was sexually assaulted when I was 7, and then again at 21, both by extended family members. And I said, so if there's anything that I can sort of even come close to relate to, it's human trafficking, the abuse that happens in human trafficking in a sexual exploit way. And she said, okay, that's your topic. And because you want people to feel that from you, and the vulnerability that is sometimes required when you're spreading a message that is dark like the one that I spread, it's like you also want to help instill some level of trust with the people you're talking to. And the way I try to do that is I bear it all and tell my story. And for me, it was a no-brainer, even though I knew that some people could use it against me. Some people could judge me for it or whatever they wanted to do for it. But another mentor of mine back in 2021 said something to me, and she was like, it's not about you. It's about who's in the audience that needs to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Whose life are you going to save today? Because it may be one word, it may be 50 words that you say, but somebody in that audience needs to hear what you have to say. That's why you go out and do it every single time, no matter how you feel, no matter how dark the message is, no matter who you're going to piss off, somebody needs you, and you got to go do it when you're called to do something like that. And so it through the years, I started really getting into actual, human trafficking awareness versus just dabbling into what's going on. And I started to learn about the significance of it in the dental industry, which is 30% of human trafficking victims visit their dentist every year. And we're missing it because we don't know what to look for. No one teaches us that in school.
No.
They just a short course on what physical abuse may or may not look like and what we are required to do as licensed professionals. But that's it. There's no further education on it, and it's definitely not delving into human trafficking either. And so when I found that out, that was one of the few things that really drove it home. But also, majority of the injuries that happen in abuse, which happens in trafficking, are to the head and the neck. And we're head and neck specialists. We stare at it more than any other healthcare provider, and with a healthy patient. So we're seeing them not because they're sick, but on a routine basis. So if anything, we can also notate the changes every 6 months or every 3 months. This patient came in this day, and 6 months later when they came in, they still had more bruises. They still had lacerations in their mouth. They have wounds that are not being healed or look like they're not being taken care of. What's going on here? We need to ask more questions. And so what I do and what I teach for the dental industry, and I'm starting to try and dive into the medical field too, because what I'm learning is they apparently don't get much training on it either, even for people in the ED in the emergency department. It's not like you think it would be.
Yeah.
And with it being the fastest growing organized crime in the world, I just don't understand that. And it's a $150 billion industry.
Yeah, some people have no idea. And speaking of what you just talked about, you said there was a quote of yours, one to read. It says 50% of injuries from abuse, which occurs during human trafficking, are to the head and neck dentistry. This is our specialty, and we can be their biggest advocates. We see these victims more than any other healthcare professional throughout the year, possibly even more if something is wrong, unquote. So I take it, when you talked about you start asking questions, I take it it's probably hard for some people to start opening up, and it maybe takes a little while for that to get done.
Yes. So there's a couple of things that the course I give, whoever I'm talking to, it doesn't have to be anyone in dentistry. I've given the course for other industries as well. And I've sent it to friends for them to share with their friends. There's recordings of it, but I give a very visual, very audible presentation. And I try to stay as motivational as possible throughout it. There are a couple times where I try and make them laugh. I usually make myself the center of what they can laugh at. But there's a way to go about it and not just shove it down someone's throat and say, figure it out. I don't do that. I specifically in dentistry, I go down each role in the office, the front office, the dental assistant, the dental hygienist, the dentist, and I tell them each individually what they can look for and what they can do. So I'm trying to actually give the industry and anyone that wants to hear it actions that they can take. And the reason I give such a visual and audible presentation is because psychology tells us that you're more likely to remember it under pressure if you've seen it before. And so when we go through our day-to-day lives, we're not paying attention to our peripheral. We're in autopilot. So
Right.
anything outside of our own existence it's really easy to miss, even if it's terrible, even if it's the worst thing you've ever seen. If you're not looking for it, it's not happening.
Are you shopping for a new watch, an engagement ring, any kind of jewelry at all? What's up, Memphis? This is Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies, encouraging you all to shop where I shop, Platinum Jewelers here in Memphis. Platinum Jewelers has a big selection of earrings, stockable rings, luxury watches, necklaces, bracelets, really whatever you need. 9387 Poplar next to Fresh Market in Germantown. So if you need anything jewelry related, go to my spot, Platinum Jewelers.
Yeah, so there's very specific things that I can show people, and I can tell people that in your day-to-day life when you're on autopilot, if you've seen it before, you'll start seeing it out of your peripheral. It's just how the brain works, the subconscious mind works. It's now ingrained in that part of your brain, and that's with anything. So part of what I do in coaching with women that I'm starting is be careful what you show your subconscious, because it never turns off. It sees everything, it hears everything. And it is making decisions for you every single day, whether you want it to or not.
Right.
And so me showing you something, and then it's more, I describe it to people as probably going to be a feeling initially of this isn't right. I know that you look like this big fancy human that's very well put together, but that child is terrified of you. I don't care how well dressed and how you have presented yourself. This doesn't feel right. And I know this doesn't feel right. But one thing I teach is I never want anyone to assume. I only want you to assess.
Right.
So assess, never assume. When you assume, that's how you get someone hurt, yourself hurt, get someone killed, or get yourself killed. You're putting yourself in a line of fire is what you need to keep in mind. And it's not about you. It's about who you're trying to help. So yeah.
What are some of the key challenges you've encountered in your work against human trafficking? Like, maybe legal barriers or lack of resources, or maybe cultural resistance?
All of the above. I wouldn't necessarily say it's been difficulties or hardships or roadblocks. I've found a way around all of them since 2019, but I will say that there's been a little pushback sometimes of well, we can't really do anything and it's not going to make a difference. So why should I even pay attention to it? And the reason is because it can happen to you. What if it were your daughter? What if it were your son? Because one day it might be, and then it's too late. And it's small actions over a period of time make big impact. With something as serious as $150 billion industry, it's not going to be fixed overnight.
Right.
It never will be fixed if we don't even try. So just remember that piece of it. What if it were your child? That's why you do it. Whether it's helping anyone or not, keep doing it. It might. I can guarantee you it won't, and it will never go away. The beast will keep growing if you just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah. I went through a Tony Robbins Zoom seminar at the beginning of 2022, and he talked about human trafficking. He said he donates $20 million a year to Operation Underground Railroad, which was founded by Tim Ballard in 2013. And, the movie out right now, The Sound of Freedom, is about some of the experience that, Tim Ballard has gone through to save people, children from human trafficking. And, not getting political, but most of our mainstream media never or rarely talks about child and human trafficking. And most people, like you said, have no idea the extent of it worldwide, and let alone in America. Why do you think that's the case?
$150 billion is on the line.
Yeah.
What happens if that goes away? It can't go away. That's it. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the price of a human life is $150 billion that they're not willing to let go of. And if we wanted to, that quote in dating where they say, if he wanted to, he would. If they wanted to, they would.
Right.
We have the resources. We have the money. We have the access to the entire world. If they wanted to, they would. So we have to, reverse engineer this. Why not? And it comes down to money almost every single time.
And sadly enough, our politicians in Washington, they know what's going on. I mean, both I call it all a big uniparty anyway. I mean, they know it's all going on. It's happening right now on the border, with people coming through, from Mexico. Stories that I've heard, I get the email from Operation Underground Railroad and read it, and it sickens me. I mean, it's hard to read it sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. I did see the movie. I saw it the day it came out. It actually didn't make it across my radar, which I think is odd. But I had a friend of mine who has a podcast as well, and he wanted to do an interview on it. So he was like, "Hey, are you going to go see this movie?" I was like, "I didn't even know it existed," which is ironic. But I went to see it, and there's a few takeaways I had from it. One, no matter who's talking about it in what way, I just want someone talking about it, especially someone with access like he has. I don't have access like that, not yet, at least.
Right.
And so if you are given the privilege to have access like that, please do it right. Don't limit yourself. And one thing that it's not that I don't necessarily agree with, it just doesn't make me feel right, is bringing religion into something like that.
Right.
If you put yourself in the mindset of a victim, if they're not religious, if they don't believe in Jesus or whoever, it doesn't matter. They're not going to ask you for help, likely, because it's hard enough to go up to someone and admit that you're being abused sexually by 50 different men in one day. If I think that you're going to judge me on top of that because of your religion, I'm definitely not going to come to you for help.
Yeah.
After the fact, in a way that is openly asked for, sure. But I don't think that something this serious and something that is this big, I don't think it should be religion led. I really don't. I think it needs to be human led. And it doesn't matter where that human comes from, what they believe in, what color they are, where they live. None of that matters. What matters is that they're a human being. They're being abused. They're being sexually abused every single day, and they need help. It doesn't matter. The rest of it is just politics and noise, and I don't have time for it. I wish that everyone as a whole would stop trying to bring politics in this, which they're doing with the movie.
Yep.
It's so much politics, and some of it is the religion aspect, and I have to agree with them. But I think they did do a good job in the beginning of the movie of portraying just how easy it can happen and just how bad it actually is. And, it is young children. It is young as like 5, 6, 7. Once you hit the age of 14 to 16, you actually start to become no longer profitable. And in that scenario, your trafficker usually either kills you or abandons you back to somewhere. It's not always where they found you. And that is how the process goes. So I do applaud them for that. I did see some people walk out, and I understand that because it's very hard to watch it. Anytime I learn something new, I have a processing moment of, it really, really hits me to my core. And I just try and remember the reason that I need to keep doing it. One, because I tell people that I'll keep doing it until I can't. And I know my limit. When I start hesitating to accept a speaking engagement, I'm hitting my limit.
Right.
And I haven't hit that yet. So does it take a piece out of me every time? Of course it does. I'm not a robot. And I have my own demons that this resurfaces when I talk about it. But I have a therapist, and I have, people that care about me, that are there for me when I need them. But in terms of the movie, I really hope that someone will take this first step that's been taken on such a large access and expand on it even more. It needs to there needs to be something purely educational, purely, this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like, this is what you should do, this is what you should absolutely not do. And that's it, because the awareness is the biggest piece. Most people don't even know what's happening right under their nose. It's
Right.
just as bad here as it is in any other country.
Yeah, that was this point that I got when last year after Tony Robbins talked about it and I started researching it. I'm like, oh my God, how bad it is all over the world, but it's horrible here.
It is. And there's two stories that I've recently put in my presentation this year. And there's two reasons. One, because I get asked all the time, are most traffickers typically male? Like, they're usually male, right? I'm like, actually, no. There's just as many women arrested for trafficking as there are males. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense. Women are inviting. They're more easy to feel like you can trust them. They're soft. They can manipulate easier. And on the other part of that, what I usually get asked is it happening in the United States? Like, that just happens in like other countries, like third world countries and all of this other stuff. And it's like, no, actually, majority of the time, the traffickers are going to other countries and bringing them here to traffic
Wow.
them. So two stories, the arrests were made this year, both of those female-led, brought from other countries to the United States.
Unbelievable. And just like you said, it's happening right underneath our noses, and most people would just have no idea.
No. And I mean, in humanity's defense, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
No one teaches us this. It's not being taught in schools. It's not being taught at any universities, even in the capacity of the healthcare industry, which is where it should be taught the most. But it's, you don't know what you don't know. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You said, quote, you have to trust that there is something amazing happening that you can't see right now, unquote. What does that mean to you?
A lot of times, and I'll speak for myself in this scenario, I struggle with being too close to the tree to see the forest. And I'll hyper fixate on this tree and think that this tree is like God's gift and all of these things. And there's an entire forest behind the tree that I'm just completely, I can't see. And I think we get in that autopilot motion, like I was talking about earlier. As humans, that's one of our flaws, and we're not robots as much as we try to be. But I think in this scenario, specifically with human trafficking, I would apply it to, even though it doesn't look like anything is happening, something's happening. You're making a difference, and the only guarantee that I can give you is if you stop, it will never stop. And it is that simple. But something that is this big, and it is literally the fastest growing organized crime in the world, even ahead of drugs. And it makes sense, right? Because think about it. You can sell a good ounce of weed once, somebody smokes it or does whatever they do with it, and then it's gone. You can't sell it again. You can sell a human being as many times in a 24-hour period as someone's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whether they want or can take it or not, that doesn't go into account. What goes into account is I can do this repeatedly.
Yeah.
And with something that dark, that horrific, we have to just keep going, even if we can't see the outcome just yet. Just keep doing it. And I would say in all aspects of your life, really, if you keep being pulled to something and it's not going away, it is never going to go away in that scenario. If anything, you're going to keep attracting that to yourself because, like I said earlier, your subconscious is always listening. The body never forgets. So you are what you attracted to you. Keep attracting good things and good things will come back. If you keep putting your head in the sand and acting like negative, dark things don't exist, you're just giving them an even darker space to just thrive in. Versus, why not see yourself as the light in a very dark room and go in and light it up instead?
What strategies do you employ in your advocacy work and when you're speaking to large groups to, raise more awareness about human trafficking?
For me, it's definitely very visual in terms of this is what it looks like, number one, because if you can't identify it, you can't stop it. You don't know what's happening. but also the statistics behind it, real life stories behind it, so that it becomes very tangible, very real to whoever I'm talking to, and the urgency is immediately created. Telling my piece of it, I do for a different reason. Actually, it's one, I want to show vulnerability to whoever I'm talking to, so that hopefully my goal in that is they'll trust me more and listen to me more, because I'm willing to give them pieces of information that they could potentially use against me, and I'm giving it anyways. But one part about my job that I didn't realize was going to happen or be a part of it is how many men and women have come to me after and told me something they'd never told another human being on the planet, which is that this has happened to them, or they've been sexually assaulted. They are being physically abused right now. They don't know how to get out. And I did open that floor. One of the first few times I spoke, I did, openly say, if there's anyone in this room that just needs to say it out loud to someone else that doesn't know you from Adam, I have no skin in this game in your life. I'm not going to do anything with the information. And sometimes the hardest part is saying it out loud, even if it's just to yourself. But releasing that to someone else can be very cathartic in the right environment. And so after I started seeing that pattern happening after every single presentation, after every webinar, there was always one, if not a handful. And I just more and more would openly make sure to strategically say, and as in a soft way as I could, if you need to come to me, you can. It's the one job I would do for free. I would do it at all hours of the day and night. And I think that's important. That's another part of the awareness is you are not alone, and what you're going through matters. You're not stuck. You're not a tree. You can leave and go and do whatever you need to at any time, but there's people around you that you can help. If they don't know, they can't help you.
True. You said, quote, 30 taught me no one is coming. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get your ass out of bed. The basement of your brain is dark, but you have to go down and clean out the cobwebs. You're going to make some of the biggest mistakes you ever made. You have to learn from them, never repeat them, and not live in them. When your younger self starts pushing that panic button, remind her your feelings are valid. You are capable of being loved without proving it first. That basement is dark and scary because we haven't walked in and brought our current light. Your body will give you what you ask of it. If you don't ask for much, it won't give you much. The moment you give your amygdala a second of hesitation, the moment's gone. It's fight or flight, period. Stop being last on your list. If holding on is holding you back, it's time to let go. There are humans that won't do what you do, but wake up every morning talking about what you do and how you're doing it wrong. And then you ask the question, this was on your LinkedIn, what has last year taught you? I love all that. And especially, the thing that stuck out to me is when you said, quote, stop being last on your list. If holding on is holding you back, it's time to let go, unquote. And I agree that so many people, and I know because I've done it myself sometimes, put myself last on my list, and it causes us various issues, throughout our lives when we do that. Why do you think that happens, fairly often? And what was it about turning 30 that made you realize that no one is coming?
So everything in that post was everything I learned in my 20s. And in no particular order. My 20s were chaos. And my 30th year was chaos. And my 31st years has been good. But it's taken me 31 years to be able to even remotely closely say something like that. And for me, I think that the biggest thing about everything that I learned in my 20s and what pushed me to say no one is coming is because they're not. And even if they are, they're still not you. They're still not going to wake up every day and be you. You're the only one that has to wake up and be you. So even if someone comes and quote unquote saves you, they're eventually going to leave. If they don't leave, they're eventually going to die, because we are not immortal and you're still going to be here. So it's not that no one is coming physically. It's keep in your head, no one is coming, because you're the person that you're looking for. You're the person that's going to wake up tomorrow and decide, am I going to keep promises to myself, or am I going to continue to break them? Am I going to keep holding on to things that are causing me triggers and trauma and neglecting myself, or am I going to let them go because I've outgrown them? It's not just that they're bad for you. It's, you need to change the perspective of, you are no longer that person that attracted them. And the reason it's so painful and you're fighting it so much is because you've outgrown them. So it's okay to let them go. You're actually doing them a disservice, including yourself, by not letting go. So in order to, quote unquote, be that light, be your current light, let go of the darkness that is still hanging on you. But also, I think a lot of what that caption, and I remember the post now, no one's brought that to my attention until just now, but I think one of the biggest things was the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get your ass out of bed. And I learned that from Mel Robbins. It's the 5-second habit. And
I follow her too. I love her.
I love her. And she really helped me when I first started learning about who she was. And I really like how she bases everything on science. And for me, because I grew up in a very unstable environment of, I had a single mother, and, that's hard. And we had enough to take care of ourselves, but I knew that we didn't have a lot of money. That's a lot on a kid too. That shouldn't be a kid's worry. But then you throw in the sexual assault that I went through by people that were never supposed to hurt me, and they did hurt me. I had a lot of trauma, and I still have a lot of trauma. And
Sure.
those pathways in my brain are still there, and I'm still currently trying to rewire them, but it's going to take decades, because it took decades for them to be created. So for me, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get your ass out of bed. When you count down from 5 like that, it ignites your brain to get up and do something. The moment you hesitate, your brain will kill it. It's trying to protect you, is what it's trying to do, and keep you safe. So you can't let it do that. But I encourage anyone and everyone that's struggling to get out of the bed, to go do something, to send a text, to send an email, to apply for a job, to buy a plane ticket that they keep putting off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, press the damn button and buy the ticket. Just buy it. Yes. Just buy it.
How can people find you and follow you on social media and learn more about, what's truly happening in, world today with human trafficking?
Absolutely. A lot of the traffic I get with messaging and things like that is going to be through Instagram. My profile is public, so you can DM me there. I am going to soon have a link tree on there where you can book time with me or schedule me to come speak, or I will soon be releasing a coaching program for women, all based on neuroscience and biochemistry.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm super, super excited for that. And I'm really leaning into it. It is something I am 100% obsessed with. And so that will be on there as well. And if you're not on social media, then you can email me. My email is lorentheactivist@outlook.com, and that is LOREN. And I will 100% be there when you need me.
Awesome. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Platinum Jewelers. And, Loren, there's a lot more I do want to talk to you about. And now that you've told me other stuff that you're going to be doing, we have even more to talk about, than just the human trafficking, and including you being a licensed skydiver. Definitely going to have you back on for part 2 sometime in the next couple of months. I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.